welcome back to Special Stage and to our live coverage of the penultimate round of the 2023 MRF Tyres BTRDA Rally Championship. This is Trackrod Rally Yorkshire and we are in the last stage of the day. It's a monster, it's a 13-mile adventure through Langdale, one of the most iconic rally stages in North Yorkshire, and a place that a stone's throw away. My family have a home and I've been coming since I was a little baby, so I have a lot of emotion and energy invested in these forests, and today there's going to be a whole load more of emotion and energy invested on this gravel. I'm delighted. We'll give you a bit of a rundown of the leaderboard shortly. We're going two-wheel drive, wrong seeded order, reverse seeded order, shall we say. That's a bit better, isn't it? Through the entry, and then we'll do a second broadcast as usual, as per the usual format. Not the format we trialled at the Three Shires with Stage End as well, but we'll have more of that very soon. So we'll be another live stream for the four-wheel drives after we've had these two-wheel drives in reverse seeded order. We have got those titles going down to possibly the wire here, or possibly the Welsh wire in a few weeks' time at the Cambrian, depending on how today goes. So more on the leaderboards as we go through shortly. But first, I'm delighted that Jonathan Pullen, Mr. JP, Mr. Yorkshire Rally Mafia, the author of said book, has hobbled along the side of this wet and treacherous stage to join me for a little bit of a chat. The Yorkshire Mafia are out in force, JP.
They're everywhere, aren't they? What a cracking day for it. And lots of Mafia jackets out there, lots of Mafia caps, and some great teams out there too as well today. So good to see some Yorkshire lads doing very well.
I took a picture at the NY 500 earlier, which, hello to you if you're watching at the NY 500, by the way. Delighted you can join us on the screens down there. There's Russell Brooks's Andrews Heat for Hire car parked outside, and there's a Yorkshire Rally Mafia sticker just over there. Andrews Heat for Hire. I love that.
Yeah, that's subtle, that, wasn't it? Yeah, on the mud flap. Yeah,
Did you do it?
No, it wasn't me.
No, it was actually on the Andrews Heat for Hire, this one.
Oh, was it? I think, is it the Escort that it's got there, or was it? Yeah. I saw one on a mud flap, and I thought...
That was the Rothmans one that I sent you a picture of. It's everywhere, but Mike Reed earlier, talking of the Yorkshire Rally Mafia, he hasn't lost it, has he?
He hasn't, has he? Quick guy. And got John Millington with him, which is quite
that's a formidable pairing.
Fantastic. What a lovely experienced crew there. Really enjoy their sport, take it very seriously, but at the end of the day, they're there to have fun.
And the man who appears on much of the marketing and paraphernalia from the Trackrod Rally Yorkshire over the years, and the Mintex, and the York National, and all the others, Mr. Bannister himself out there with that red stripe glowing magnificently.
He's trying hard today. He's going really well. And yeah, actually, he's good. Look at that boy. Good lad.
I'll tell you what, we've picked a corner here in Langdale, and it's just basically a 90 right, and usually 90 rights don't yield much entertainment, but we've already had Andrew Appleby through his Gorse car, and as sideways as I've ever seen Mr. Andrew Appleby. And here we are with the British Army motorsport pairing of Bridge Carey and Royston Carey in that Renault Clio, lights ablaze, giving us a flash for the cameras, and coming through this last stage of the day. 45 stage miles make up Rally Yorkshire. The Trackrod this year, it was 47 miles. My maths do me proud there. If they did the 12 miles through Dalby last night. Did you come out last night, JP?
Yeah, fantastic. What an atmosphere. And I forgot just how steep that hill is out of Michaelis Bend. That was a hard walk.
Yeah, hard walk if you've ended up in Michaelis Bend, as somebody did last night.
Yeah, they did, yeah. And I mean, it was interesting how many people tried to help those guys out, which is wonderful. It's all part of the sport, isn't it? That people throw themselves into helping people get stuck and do their best to, the level best to get them out and get them on the way again. Superb. But the atmosphere, fantastic last night, Paul. I
didn't come out last night, but I did see some of the atmosphere online. The only thing you don't get is the smells, but I could imagine it. It was just watching it. It had a thick atmosphere.
Oh, fantastic! And it just there's something no other sport has, and just that atmosphere. You can't see anything. The lights are shining into the sky. Then you hear those engines coming, and when they approach at such a speed, wow! It's just something else. Nothing can describe it other than being there and seeing it. It's just fantastic.
Completely agree. The only thing I'm disappointed with these days is we don't have Oliver's Mount to throw in the mix as well. But at least Oliver's Mount is busy this weekend with the Gold Cup, so we've got a motorsport takeover of the Yorkshire coast.
That's true. Yeah. We can't be everywhere at the same time, can we? And I suppose my preference would be here, but Oliver's Mount is a classic, isn't it? It would be lovely to see the cars back on there someday.
It would, and I have got it on a bit of authority from the circuit manager there that that's something he's hoping to do. So the hill climbs that they're doing are getting more popular with four-wheeled competitors, and they're hoping that will just help them get a few more dates out of the local council.
Fantastic. I do hope that happens. I think Scarborough deserves it as well. When you see the crowds, you see the amount of people that's brought into North Yorkshire, it's absolutely astonishing. It deserves it, and I think Scarborough will benefit from it as well.
If you're just tuning into our live coverage of Trackrod Rally Yorkshire, that is the voice of Jonathan Pullin, the author of Yorkshire Rally Map here. And what other book was it, Jonathan? That's not the only one, is it? That's Kurt Hodgson, by the way, Sam Campbell.
Yuck's Fast Book. And
I need a copy of Yuck's Fast Book. I can't get one anywhere.
I've got one that's falling apart. You got that. And I did Chris Slater, Memories of the Rally Champion as well, which was, a lovely book.
Yeah, we haven't got Yuck's. We've got the other one, but we haven't got Yuck's. So I'll have the X-Works copy.
I'll sort you one out. Yeah, no problem, mate. No problem. Yeah.
But Jonathan's been around so long in the sport. You've known a lot of these guys, grown up with and competed with a lot of these guys. And just in a minute, I'm going to get JP's story of his course car adventure. We're talking about Andrew Appleby, and I was impressed with how sideways Andrew was throwing that Subaru. And as you see, Alan Young, Ashley Young through. We are doing reverse seated order again for the two-wheel drives before we do a second broadcast for the four-wheel drive field later on. Andrew Appleby is as sideways as I've ever seen him, I think. I saw him pretty sideways at Cadwell Park once, but Giles Armitage was sideways in the first one as well. Josh Rhodes alongside, but nicely done. Tell us your course car story, because I love that, JP.
Well, it was back in 77, 78. There was a rail at York National Rally, and my co-driver was the clerk of the course, and he said, look, I know it's the first time you've driven an Escort, because I'd always rallied minis before that. You'd only just got the car. It needed a lot of work doing to it, and I frankly couldn't afford to do it. So I just took the car as it was, and we did course opening car with a bit of pressure because I had Malcolm Wilson's car one behind me. I was the last one through.
I'm smiling because I know what's coming.
And frankly, it was chaotic in that stage. From that very first stage, I didn't know what was going on, but we somehow got through the first stage. The second stage, I think, was Gisborough, and unfortunately, I had quite a big off-the-road experience with that. At the bottom of a hill, my co-driver told me a lot off. He was not impressed with my skills. So I got back onto the road, shot up the hill thinking, right, we're sorted now. And then the road went sharp right, 90 right.
It's always the road's fault.
It was just inconceivable it could come up.
Not I went left, but the road went sharp right.
It was inconceivable. He didn't even shout it. I mean, he was still telling me off from going off for the first bend. And we went over the edge and through a fence and knocked a tree down. It was quite chaotic, and I had another off after that as well, so it's
I mean, remarkable you got on after the second off, but to have another one as well, absolutely brilliant. And I'm guessing, probably the question I don't need to ask, but I'm guessing as you see Chris Lonnon and Mark Cortier through in the MGZR, as always we are following the narrative of the MRF Tyres BTRDA Rally Championship, but we're covering all of the crews through this entry because that's what rallying deserves. Talking to JP, I guess that's the last time, JP, that you did course car.
It was, funnily enough, yeah, strangely enough, but it was one of those...
Available for anyone who has a bowler, a defender or anything they'd like you to chuck into the trees?
By the time I'd finished, the head gasket had broken, the back axle was bent like a banana, and frankly the car wasn't going any further.
Isn't it a shame that those are the days before GoPros?
Isn't it such a shame?
That'd be on YouTube, wouldn't it?
I think it would.
We were looking at some footage of Banner actually in the 1990 York National on YouTube.
91, yeah, that's right, we won. With the... when the axle broke, wasn't it, on Wycombe North? Right. Yeah.
White broke as well, if you look at the first part of the stage. He's giving it some stick. John Coolidge, Louise Coolidge. And just to clarify my earlier point, Tommy Meadows has Laura Coolidge in with him in the Fiesta R2, so my confusion was cleared up later on the entry, so we'll do it earlier on during this live stream in an Anglia which was going ever so well through there.
Yeah, fabulous. Nice to see an old car like that, still going well.
Yeah.
Handling well.
Yes. It was, and it sounded good as well. We've got a really big historic rally contingent going on right now, and you get the usual, they're all Mark II Escorts. They're not.
No, they're not, no. Look at these Porsches. Look how well they're going now. I'm looking forward to the Roger Albert. It'd be very interesting to see how some of these guys go. I think Seb Perez is entering the Porsche, is he? Is that right?
Yeah, I'm hoping that it might change for a slightly different two-seater sports car.
There is a rumour, isn't there? But either way, he's going to be fantastic to watch. And it was lovely to see Ryan Champion win 2 years ago on the 21 RAC. So
I still have the backdrop in my garage where we made the makeshift studio, but I'm pleased to say that I will actually be there for this for this RAC this year. Here we have the first of our MRF tyres BTRDA Rally Championship competitors through the stage. Adam Quinn, Harry Nichols in that Suzuki Swift, going well. And I lamented earlier that we seem to lose. We have these one-make series cars, and some of them, like the Suzukis, are supremely successful. I remember when they came here as part of the BRC, and then they disappear.
Yeah, yeah. And how nice to see some of the Clubman cars out there still working, still being used, and goodness knows how many years they'll go on for, but it's lovely to see them.
And I've been trying to make this breaking news to a lot of people today. Everyone goes, yeah, I know that. You know that Steve Bannister's got Ethel back?
I did know that, yeah.
I'm yet to find someone who didn't know that. I thought that was big news earlier. Someone told me at the NY500, and I was like, wow, I'm going to use that. And I made it big news earlier on the stream, and Tom Hutchins went, yeah, I knew that, mate.
Yeah, he's been around for a bit, Paul, sorry, mate. But he's had it really smartened up beautifully, and I think could be used as well. So
is he actually planning to use it?
Yeah, well, it's turned to historic spec rather than the old Ethel spec. So
I don't know whether I'm sad about that or not. I'd quite like to see it in the old spec.
Yeah, but it'd be just nice to see him out in it, wouldn't it?
Phil Lilly, Jonathan Haynes, who earlier on were pushing on past us, and here I think they've actually caught Freddie Camp and Stephen Spear in the Mark 1. I think that's the way that went, because on the road at least they should have been switched the other way around. It's a 13-mile stage, this. In today's money, that's a monster. I know these stages are used to seeing a lot more than that, and the gods of Landale will be laughing at me for saying that, but it's a long stage.
It is, and it's a fantastic stage as well. Very, very fast, Paul. I did this in 2006 in a Mark 2, and the stage finished over by Fylingdales, and the road towards the finish there is just flat out straight, and it's quite scary. Yeah. I really enjoyed it. It was fantastic stuff.
It opens out a lot though as well, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. But yeah, it's surprisingly close to restricted area as well. Surprised that they'd let the stage run, but yeah, fantastic stage.
Oh, we go through Epping and Carewent and all the others.
Oh yeah, nobody cares, do they? Or maybe they do. Yeah.
I was in East Ayrton earlier, and it was just rally traffic everywhere. All you could hear, I was filling it with fuel, and there's just rally cars bombing past in all directions.
Paul, it was the same going down to Dolby. Heading down towards the village. It was just like the old days. We were queuing this morning and saying, my goodness, look at all this traffic. It's just like the old days. It's wonderful to see. I think the Trackrod's doing very well for spectators this year.
Very well for spectators and very well for competitors, because it was a bustling, well, it was a capacity entry, so 166 plus 12 reserves.
Yeah, absolutely. Isn't it fantastic? It's lovely to see how, despite hard times, we're supposed to be in a recession right now, but somehow people are managing to find the money to do what's an expensive event. And
my theory is that there used to be a number of good rallies that took in these forests. Now you've got the Raponian, Moulton touch a little bit on this area, but you haven't got the Mintexes and all the others anymore, have you?
No. This guy's having a good go as well.
Yeah, it looks like a bit of a moment there for Martin Beach and Sam Kelty. You can probably see why the bumper's hanging off that 205 GTI. Do you know what? That was misfiring early. We're all cringing, but it's done 5 stages with that misfire. So if it does another 13, fair play to that little 1.6 engine.
If you can get that to the finish, fantastic. Well done, man. Yeah, you're right. Back to the 70s and 80s, there were a lot of events out here. Leeds Crest, Quip, Elcar. Yeah. Gosh, there was a lot. There was
How quick in more recent years?
That's right. Yeah. Some fantastic events. So no, it's much reduced now. And but yeah, good to see people out here today.
If you're just tuned in, this is Special Stage Live. I'm Paul Woodford. Delighted to have you along if you're watching at the NY500 or at the Motorist. That is how you do it. That is exactly what we want to be seeing out here today. It's why we came out in the forests today. Terry Cree, Richard Shaw's in that historic Mini Cooper S, and it proves just how good condition these stages are in. The single use here on the Trackrod Rally Yorkshire coming into its own when it encourages people to bring cars like that out. If you are just tuned in though, I'm delighted to be joined with you, and I've managed to hoik Jonathan Pulling out of the Spectator area. JP, the man behind the Rally Mafia, the Yorkshire Rally Mafia books, and then we're having a bit of a chat about the old days, because these forests just have so many stories, JP.
Yeah, the guy that's just gone past there, Terry Cree, has been rallying for years and got loads of great experience. And the chap before that, Phil Lilly in the Wide Escort, again, very, very quick guy. I think nearly won the Trackrod back in the 80s, certainly 3rd or 4th one year. Good to see these guys still doing it, isn't it? Great, you know. But lots of young blood too, which is wonderful to see. So nice to see the experienced boys out.
thumbs up for the cameras for Alan Kitson and John Roberts in that Mark 1. Yeah, there's nothing better for me than seeing, if you like, the new guard, the Jason Pritchards of this world. There's not many people quicker than him in an Escort, which shows the pace last night to say he was 5th after that 12-miler through Dolby. But him versus people like Bannister and you know, like you say, people like Mike Reed and the old guard who have always known how to drive through these forests. Roger Fowler and Malcolm Mick Johnson in their Mark II making short work of this. We followed that car back actually earlier on, and it's had a bit of a clean because it wasn't in those colours earlier. It was definitely brown and white, wasn't it? But no, there is a real changing of the guard in historic rallying, and I like the fact we've got four-wheel drives coming in. I know that's not your era, that's mine, but I like that category coming in as well.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how they get on, isn't it, with the Sapphires and the Gallants, and but it's a new era. You're right, it's not my era, but change has to happen, and it'll be great to see what people can make of it. I think it was interesting to see how George, he was doing really well with it, wasn't he, yes, with the Gallant? So
yeah, some notable retirements actually. I probably should mention we've lost George, we've lost Ash and Pete Slights. We had a bit of a theory on that perhaps because son was catching dad insisted that they both go home early, but that's obviously not what happened. But no, Ash was going really well, both those cars, so that's really disappointing for them. Early family meal at the local pub, no doubt.
Yeah, probably, yeah. There'll be some discussions in the garage, I'm sure, next week.
Whose fault was it?
Whose fault was it? Yeah, exactly.
Oh, there we go. Do you know what? If it all goes wrong, just style it out like Matt Bown and Wayne Langthorne there in their Hillman Avenger. That was nicely styled out, wasn't it?
Which is great fun, isn't it? Yeah. What a trier. Everybody loves a trier.
Yeah. And we love it when they go sideways, get it all out of shape and gather it all up. The last thing you want is them staying there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the beauty of rear-wheel drive. It just makes a great watch. But yeah, the four-wheel drives are going fantastic today. BTRDA, what a quality top of the field range of cars and drivers. Some real commitment going on this morning. So I've thoroughly enjoyed seeing these guys.
I'll give you a bit of a rundown. If you're watching on Facebook on Special Stage or on YouTube, or you're joining us at one of the locations showing our live coverage, Elliot Payne and Tom Woodburn to go straight in there at the top of this big title battle we have here at the final 2 rounds of the BTRDA. Oof. We've Gary Whitney and Carl Keating just proving to me that I really just want to remove that tree stump from inside that grass over there, just in case, because everyone's getting a little close to it for my liking. So that title battle at the moment looks like being a decider. I believe Elliot Payne and Tom Woodburn take another victory here, another maximum, even though Aaron Newby and Jamie Edwards are currently second and only by 3.7 seconds. I believe my maths when drop scores come into it sometimes takes a little to be desired, but I was talking this through with Aaron Newby in the week, and I'm pretty sure that would mean that Elliot Payne and Tom Woodburn are back-to-back, or at least Elliot is back-to-back BTRDA champion in the Gold Star. Tom Woodburn taking his first alongside Elliot in that Mango Go Fiesta. But don't quote me on it just yet. I'm sure Ian Arden will send me a grumpy text now saying that that's completely wrong. But David Henderson, Chris Lees, who won the Rally Yorkshire Trackrod last year in the BTRDA category, are currently 15.7 back from Aaron Newby and Elliot Payne, and that does show you the pace that we've got out in front, and a title battle is always a good thing, JP, for getting the pace up there.
Yeah, and making sure they get to the finish and get those points on the doors. That's the key thing. So I think a different strategy when you're driving for a championship rather than just selected events. You've got to think long term, haven't you? You can't.
You have, but we've seen that from Elliot twice now. We've seen the last rally at the Woodpecker, he managed things. So I thought this time he's just going to go all out and do it. But maybe I thought he maybe wanted to do it at home, and he's now doing that. So this morning, having gone in, and he was just over 1.5 behind Aaron. The fight's definitely on, 3.7 behind at this stage. So we have, and normally by the way, it's 2 stages left on that, the Sustaindale results we're looking at, because at the moment they'll be in Dolby. Sure. So that's a big afternoon for those boys battling for that title. Russ Thompson in 4th place with Stephen Link alongside in the B13. Evo is still there or thereabouts if something goes wrong up ahead, but I'm devastated to tell you Matthew Hurst and Declan Deere did have a big do at the end of the first stage. Gail Rigg that we were watching in earlier, that's why they didn't post a time for the first part of it, and they ended up something like 30 seconds back. It didn't quite quite go over on its roof. We've seen the video. The car sort of clouts the bank, does the 360 and bounces every corner off the bank. So they have sadly retired unless something major goes wrong for the other three championship protagonists. I think that is end of the day for Matthew and Declan, who've fought so hard this year and given us so much entertainment. I was talking to Matt a little bit after the Woodpecker when they had that devastating engine failure. The bad luck at this end of the season has not at all represented the season that they have had, because they have been such a brilliant pair. Having jumped into that Fiesta R5, you'll know from back in the day, jumping into different cars when you're fighting at the top of a category, especially something like the BTRDA Gold Star, and suddenly being at the front and fighting for the championship 2 years in a row. Number three has to go their way, doesn't it?
I know. Where did he come from? It just where did he come from? We saw him at the finish actually of Gale Rig, and they had the car jacked up, and Declan and Matt were under the car trying to sort out the suspension, but it looked like quite a big job. So they're definitely out now, aren't they?
They're definitely out. Yeah, it came down and clouted the right front suspension pretty hard on the clip that I saw from one of our TV crew who happened to be there. I mean, it's always even doubly gutting, isn't it, if you end up retiring and the TV crew's there to mop up for you.
No one wants that. No. It's embarrassing enough already without having the TV crew there. But I feel sorry for them because they're real triers and great to watch on the stage.
Such an unlucky crash as well. You'll see it in the Seacon UK Rally Show, which comes your way on the first Friday in October, and we'll have highlights from this and from the Cambrian. Or will it come? Will that be in the November one, producer? I think that'll be in the November one, won't it? Wow, this year's gone quickly. Anyway, you'll see it in the Seacon UK Rally Show. But yeah, it was a really unlucky crash. They were fast. They were coming into the flying finish, just yards, a matter of yards from the finish, and that's just absolutely gutting. Especially after last time, they were really trying, and yeah, that's sometimes the way this sport goes. It can be bitterly disappointing, and you've got to try and take the positives, but that's easier said than done.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to show for it after all that investment of time and money to do a rally and then not make the finish, and you're in with a fight of a really grand result. Oh, I can't imagine how it's going to feel. I was never lucky enough to be that far up the field, but I think we all know, anybody who's competed will know how you feel. And it's the effort, it's the time, it's the hassle you have in putting into doing an event, not just the huge amount of money and sacrifice you have to put in for it, but then to make an error like that, and he must be kicking himself.
Yeah, he will be, and he doesn't need to kick himself too hard because, as I say, that performance this year has been monumental for Matt Hurst and Declan Deer. But the eyes are now on Elliot Payne. Tom Woodburn out in front, 3.7 seconds. The gap is by no means comfortable. Aaron Newby, Jamie Edwards, who have only done 2 of these rallies this season in the past. The other 5 are completely new to them, and that speaks volumes in itself. Onto the B13 class battle. Russ Thompson in 4th overall. It won't surprise you to know that he is leading the way emphatically there with Stephen Link alongside. Another pair who have really shown a clean set of heels this year. Rob Wilson, Richard Crozier were on it past us in the older Evo 7 in the Ravenel car in the first stage of the day. They're 6th overall. Ian Bainbridge, Will Atkins just getting to grips with that Volkswagen Polo R5, splitting them. It's a Polo sandwich. And Pat Naylor, Ian Lawrence joining us back in the championship in B13. Delighted to have them back there in 9th place overall. Some good pace given the time out of the car in their Evo 9. Have we got a tyre flapping, or is that just, I think that's just the inner wheel arch flapping on that Constantine MG3. 3 cars at once here. Or is it 4? 4 cars at once. Ian Jemison is has a rich hunting ground there, doesn't he, on his local stage of that Porsche? Do you remember when he first brought that out?
I do.
I thought he was mad.
I know, and he makes it work, doesn't he?
He is mad, but...
Yeah, he is bonkers. But he's a great driver, actually. I had the pleasure of co-driving for him back in the 80s. He used to rally a Chevette, and we had some great results. We had a 3rd on the Christmas stages, and some often top 5 results, often the old Hemswell stages. Oh, fantastic venue. We had some top 3 results there as well. So very, very quick, and that Porsche, what a glorious thing to see on the stages.
Nice that Ben's following in his dad's footsteps. So Dad's moved on to Porsches, and Ben's now playing with the Chevettes.
Ben's really come on. He's really showing some good.
I think that makes it 2043, doesn't it, when Ben will get himself a modern car?
Yeah, probably. Knowing your maths, it's completely wrong.
Oh, you've heard. So we're back to the action here, and as you can see, it's thick and fast. Simon Double, Jessica Mitchell in their MG ZR 160. I have to actually mention, I mentioned it earlier, that it seemed like a really fast car earlier, and it turns out it was Ed Wayne's MG-ZR. It's the X-Works X-Power cars. No wonder it looked well prepared. It's the X-Option price car, if you remember him in that. And that was Will Banks' brother. Will sent me that message. Thank you for that. Car 159 has rolled in this stage. We believe that could be the reason for the gap there. Just looking down, that's David Butterworth, Kim Butterworth in the RS 1600. Not nice to hear that. They are okay though. Will Armitage, Jeremy Pole in the 306. There we go. There we go. As you were talking about Sierra Sapphires and Glyn Lyons, Joe Patterson were giving us shades of Colin McRae earlier. Colin McRae wouldn't have done that, but that's great to see out.
No, you're right. But those things are a bit of a handful, I think. A big car, aren't they? Really hard to handle. But yeah, good to see some different cars out for a change.
Yeah, and I think, as you said earlier, with the four-wheel drives now in the historics, I think we might just, with George Lepley out there doing the business, although he has retired again today, we might just see some other people thinking, I'll bring something out. There must be a lot of Group A cars sat in sheds somewhere.
But yeah. I think they're really starting to appear abroad, aren't they? Belgium is really showing some great kit out there now.
Well, we see so many people jumping into R5s, and they've got the money to compete at that level. Luke Watts sounding like he needs a new exhaust. Mark Twynham alongside for this event. He was challenging me to get Mark Twynham's name right, having said it wrong for 12 years before Mark politely pointed it out at the BTRDA dinner last year. I was like, well, thanks for leaving it 12 years, Mark. You know, if there's anything else I'm doing wrong, be sure to point it out a little sooner than that, won't you? So I've been thinking of ways to say his name this week, and Twinami is my favourite so far. Can you think of any other combinations?
Don't put me on the spot right now. I'm sure if I went away and thought about it, but
I think I think I used to call him Twiname, didn't I? So we've gone with Twiname. His real name's Twynham, but Twinami I think is a nice compromise.
Tsunami. That's the best I can come up with right now.
Luke Watts put me up to that, Mark. So when you're watching this back, you know, I do know now after 12 years how to say your name. So thank you for that. It's just a shame it took so long in coming. If you are just tuned in, yes, I'm waffling again. This is live coverage of the Trackrod Rally Yorkshire. It is the final stage of the day, but don't be fooled. It's no mean feat. It's 13 miles through Langdale, one of the most iconic, exciting forests in British rallying. It is round 7, the penultimate round of the 2023 MRF Tyres BTRDA Rally Championship. There's Ray Barnes and Ula Budniska in the Lotus Sunbeam, another car that we followed through East Ayrton earlier. There's something, in fact, that came towards us. There's something about a Sunbeam or a Mark II Escort with its back end just dropped down, just looking like it's having a rest through traffic.
And just, Henry Simon, what a guy he was with this Sunbeam. Fantastic. Yeah. RSC Rally.
Done stages like these and done this stage.
He will have done this stage, quite whether it's this way around, I'm not sure, but yeah, they're a fantastic car, aren't they? And it's lovely still seeing them out being used.
The thought of, my dad tells me often about when we used to walk out onto the Langdale stage from where they've got this holiday home that my grandparents had when I was a baby. The thought of walking out with my mum and dad as a little toddler, and Michelle Mouton and Tony Pond and Harry Vatton and all the big names hammering past us in these forests. It's just, it sends shivers down my spine. I wish I could go back and be that little 2-year-old again.
I bet you do, yeah. I think I was about 10 when I first got out to see a stage, and that would be Kilburn, which hasn't been used for many years. It comes out at Full Sutton Bank, and that was an iconic stage, and lots of lovely stages still here in Yorkshire that don't get used anymore. Wycombes, there was 2 Wycombes, Wycombe North, Wycombe South, Bickley. Where else?
When I say Langdale, it was actually Bickley. Backley's Farm is where our holiday home is. So it was the Bickley stage that we used to go and watch on. So yeah, it doesn't get used now, does it?
No, not at all. Harwood Dale, that hasn't been used for a long, long time. Some super stages. Langdale, where we are today, is a very, very quick stage, and it's in such good condition, Paul. Have you noticed just how good it is? So whoever's looking after these roads, well done, sir.
Jacob Neal, Russell Thompson there through in one of the BMW Mini Cooper Challenge cars. You'll see a few of those out this weekend. It's one of the many cars that sums up this, that makes up the Trackrod Rally Yorkshire rally weekend. We've got a number of them. If you were watching in the lead up to this, you'll know that you had multiple entry lists to kind of cobble together. I just wish that, and for the future, if we could just stick the start list out, even if it's an estimated start list, just with everything just in roughly the right order. I think that might just help with the public, because there's a lot of people at NY500 asking, so what order does it all go in then? So we need to learn lessons from that, I think. We don't help ourselves sometimes.
Mixing fields together is a little bit of a mistake. If we keep them all separate.
Well, at least, you know, with the seeding taken into mind, that could be quite difficult, but at least putting a start list out so people can at least look at what order things will go out in, as you see Paul and John Turton in the MG.
But when we had the historic rally, and then we'd have the clubman rally, and then the international rally, it made it much clearer, I think, for the public. You're right, it can be very confusing.
Confusing for me. I did all my notes on my entry list. Now I'm sort of flicking between the pages as we go through, but it's now nice and sunny and dry here in the Yorkshire Forest, as you can see, and just managing to keep it on the road. It's Nigel Booley and Dave Cato. There'll be some nice donuts and drift compilations from this corner, along with a lot of nice... You can always tell when you're on a formidable corner, because the photographers all gather on the inside of it.
There's quite a gaggle of them over there, Paul, isn't it?
That's a great word. I'm pleased you use that. Whenever someone says, what's the plural for this, please? Even if there is actually a word, I'll say it's a gaggle, obviously.
It's a gaggle. Clearly, it's a gaggle.
A gaggle of some of the best photographers in British rallying, and one of the youngest as well, Ben Lawrence over there, who's 13, and some of his photos, all of his photos, but some of them in particular, they're astounding. So I always say this, but do check him out, but online on his Facebook, Ben Lawrence Photography on Facebook and Instagram. Fantastic young photographer. He's learning from the very best. His dad, not least, Paul Lawrence, and he's got Russ Otway over there looking over his shoulder as well. These are good guys to learn from. And there we go. There we go. That is how you do a 90 right in a Fiesta R2. That was, I think it was James Lightfoot, Helen Harkness in the R2 Turbo, just managing to gather it up. Saw Doctor 2, we don't need those four-wheel drive historics involved in this championship. Well, I don't know. There is a discussion to be had about how we administer those historics, and it obviously starts with it gaining popularity and gaining some traction, if you excuse the pun. But I do think they have their place. I, for one, would like to see Group A cars like George's used more. And there is a man who was and still is, depending on what happens in the rest of today, in with a mathematical shout of the Fuchs Lubricants Bronze Star category. Chris Greenall, James Greenall alongside in their Nova. Those guys have been pushing on this season, and we've had 5 people in with a shout coming into this rally mathematically of the Bronze Star in the 1400s. It's not quite where it needs to be yet. We need it. We've got Joe Everett, who's showing signs of coming back out. We had Dave Brick to be toeing the water this year. We need people like Julian Wilkes to buy a car, Justin Lawson. But when Dave Brick came out, it was a great moment to be able to gauge the pace. Absolutely. And Karen and Nigel, they were a second apart on the Woodpecker before they retired. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. We need close competition, don't we? Yeah. And Dave Brick, very, very experienced, but what a trier. Fantastic to watch on the stages.
And a character. So when you see our new format, if you tune in for the Three Shires, last weekend you will see we're trialling something a bit new, and we're going to hope to bring that out next season in earnest, perhaps sooner, as Aaron Ricks and Abby Haycock scream past us. Exemplary example of how to, I don't know why I suddenly went to Old English, but exemplary example of how to take a 90 right in a Yorkshire Forest in that Ricks Engineering Mark II. But if you have seen our change of format, we are hoping, or we will be mixing in stage end with stage coverage, and you'll get to see some of these characters again, because that's one of the disappointing things of being by the side of the stage. You miss that kind of character of some of the drivers who have made the stories so great over the years. And we do need that back, so we're looking forward to doing that. And on the Three Shires, we got a bit of that, and we could see the characters behind the helmets. So again, like we were for the first stage of the day, we are 3/4 or so into this 13-miler to end the day. So the competitors you're seeing coming through this final stage are coming through the last few miles of this rally, and it's been one of those rallies where you couldn't call it earlier on, and then the weather played a part in it as well. Philip Clark and Richard Bonner there in their Mark II. We're getting towards some of the championship protagonists, JP, to have 3 titles, 4 if you count the BRC, possibly going down to the wire here, and possibly being decided at the penultimate rounds of the whichever series they're in, is fantastic.
Yeah, brilliant, isn't it? It's great for everybody. I think we can all enjoy it, and what fast stages to make their point and see who's going to be the bravest and the quickest. A lot of this is real bravery. You know, some of these straights are extremely quick, and it's who gets the power down first and keeps their foot down and leaves their braking as late.
You were impressed with Dan Mennell last night.
Oh, he was flying last night. I was so pleased for him. I suppose a young pair of eyes in the dark, really proved as well. But he's a naturally talented guy, very impressive. First time out in a BDG, so he hasn't been out for a year.
Stuart and Linda Carris, who have been around doing these stages for as long as I can remember doing this, and they have been doing that as well. That basically is a Mark 1 pendulum right there, and displayed nicely. I remember sitting with those guys at a North Humberside Motor Club dinner a few years ago, and some of their stories are wicked.
Oh, they've been around forever. Stuart was out in a Cortina. He was running Cortinas way back in the, I think, late 60s, early 70s, something like that. A very, very good guy. York Motor Club man through and through, and a great auto tester as well, actually. Has a fantastic collection of cars. What
I find remarkable is that I struggle to go on a trip to a nice fancy restaurant for a wedding anniversary dinner, and we get lost, and we struggle to keep our marriage together. They've been doing it since the 60s inside a rally car.
Rallying together, yeah. And they do such a lot together, and they're a great couple, great characters, real triers.
My mum and dad used to rally in the 70s and 80s, and so the story goes. This is the Porsche we saw earlier on of James Brady, Jack Brady. It obviously had a bit of a do, but then again, that's fine. It's just winking at us. There's no real damage to be had there. And so the story goes, and mum loves to tell this one, that she used to call it, and they were in a Mark 1 Cortina GT, and mum would call the corner, and dad would go, "Are you sure?" And she'd say, "If you want me to say it again, I'm going to get out." And he'd do that all the way through the rally, and in the end, it just wasn't working.
Do you know, just seeing that one-eyed Porsche there reminds me of a story of Piggy Thompson. He used to rally Porsches, and he broke a headlight on an RAC, pulled into service. Ronnie McCartney lent him a new one, they fitted it. As he pulled out of service, he hit the service barge and broke it again.
It's brilliant. Piggy Thompson's a name that doesn't come off as often as it should. Father of James Thompson, a touring car driver, of course, and a man who, if you've been rallying around these parts, Tom Hennon in the Mark II. I love to see an unarched Mark II Escort every now and again. Unarched Escorts, the road rally cars. The cars, not everyone had big arches back in the day, did they?
Oh, absolutely. I'm just going through a really old photo collection that's been hidden behind a safe for the last 40 years. And out of these photographs...
Hidden on purpose, just to give you a bit of glee later in life.
It's a chap called Peter Smith who he was a photographer, self-employed photographer, and he worked for Colin Taylor Productions, did a lot of the WRC events back in the 70s and 80s, but he did a lot of local events around here. And it was interesting to go through the negatives, and you see, you're right, lots of sort of old Mexicos and lots of unarched. They would be used on road events and used on stage events, and that was it.
And driven to work quite often as well.
And driven to work, absolutely. And some of them were Group 4 Escorts that were being used in the lanes, you know.
Oh, look at Pete Smith with it. He had his ex-works Opel Ascona in the lanes.
He certainly did, and very, very quick too. Charlie Payne, very early days, Group 4 Escort, full BDG, with the headphones on, doing things like the Calderford. I found some pictures of him overshooting a junction actually on the Calderford some years ago.
Dig that out, JP. Get that on Facebook, because Charlie would absolutely love that. Actually, talking of road rallying, Mark Weller commented on our earlier stream, and I did promise I'd say this. If anybody wants to navigate tonight in Carmarthen, it's the Autumn Road Rally. Steve King's desperately in need of a nav, so please, a bit late notice, I know, but if you want to nav on the Carmarthen tonight, if you were going out spectating instead, maybe throw your hand in the ring and jump in the Goda with the navigator seat. Message Mark Weller or Steve King. Tony Jardine, Alexander Proctor. Now, I'm interested to get your take on this, JP, because I think, personally, the only way we're keeping these old cars running on the stages, which is what we all want, is sustainable fuels. I don't want to see Teslas out here on the stage. I want to see these things running. Sustainable fuels. Tony Jardine's got a tank full of sustainable fuel, as he said last night, and it's completely synthetic.
Wow, that's impressive. We need the noise, don't we? Part of motorsport is the noise, and to lose that would be, well, I think you would lose half the support in motorsport.
Cars on engine management need to be tweaked. They need the map tweaking. You need someone like Neil Howbridge to tweak your carb if you're not on an electronic map. But there's no need for all these hardened valve seats like you had to have when you changed through to unleaded from 4-star. So the future's bright if you look at that. Tony Jardine out there and really pushing the message that he's lowering his carbon footprint and he's using carbon-free fuel.
I didn't know that, and that's very impressive and good on him.
He did it on the RAC last year as well, but that was his first foray into it.
I had heard that. That's right. I hadn't connected. Right, very impressive.
Gary Beckwith, Kirsty Angel alongside in their Mark II. To remind you, we are giving you the story of the MRF Tyres BTRDA Rally Championship here on Trackrod Rally Yorkshire, where we have 3 titles: the Gold Star, the Silver Star, and the Fuchs Lubricants Bronze Star, which all could be sewn up today, and we'll come to those championship battles as our protagonists come through this final stage. Langdale, a 13-miler to finish what has been a very, very good day on iconic stages here in Yorkshire. But we are also covering every other competitor, as we always do. Scott Renshaw, Terry Wilson, who switched into that Fiesta. It seems to suit them. Front-wheel drive on these stages must be pretty terrifying at times, because you haven't quite got the control if it goes wrong in a front-wheel drive car on these stages when it's fast.
Oh yeah. Understeer is the biggest fear I have, I think, when I've ever driven a stage, and that's what front-wheel drive is. Needs to be controlled. When you go with a really good driver, a really technical, with high technical ability, somebody like Ash Slights, who was very good in front-wheel drive. He was always good to watch, but a very, very skilled at left foot braking, could steer the car beautifully, set it up beautifully using left foot braking style, and that's what I love to see the real talent.
I did the Cambrian with Tim Rogers, right. Same thing. Yeah. Tim knows how to pedal, and it doesn't matter what he's in, 4-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, front-wheel drive, but unbelievable. I mean, Cluck Einog was the one that just I could barely get the notes out. Just watching him, and he's so physical with it as well, just throwing the thing and committing from side to side. And he sort of looked at me as if to say, "Are we still doing notes then?" Or I'm just watching it.
But it's somebody who's got that skill. It's wonderful to admire, and it's amazing what it can do to a front-wheel drive car to make it go around the bends really efficiently and quickly. Yeah. And it's getting that grip. And they're able to brake her in the right places, control the car through the bend. Fantastic. If you can master it, it's something to be seen.
Good news is our leading Fuchs Lubricants Bronze Star competitors coming through here shortly, and you'll get a masterclass, JP. Sorry, producer Wayne was pointing something out there. See, we were talking about Robert Goff earlier on our first live broadcast of the day. Now I've said his name and told everybody he's very close to where we are. He hasn't got a choice. Come on, Mr. Goff, we need a word. So, one of our Silver Star competitors coming here in 3rd place, having given us such entertainment on the stage with Paul Morris alongside, didn't actually make it out onto the rally, and it was the subject of much confusion earlier on for me. Robert, firstly, tell us why you didn't start this rally with Paul alongside.
We started last night, and we did the stage last night, and then about 2/3 of the way through we had trouble with the engine, so it was unfortunate that we couldn't restart this morning.
Because, of course, your main fight was here in the BTRDA, which is why I was talking about the rally today. And having been in the hunt for the Silver Star all year and giving us such a performance, disappointing.
Yeah, very disappointing. We wanted practice for the RAC in the dark, so that's what we did last night, and it was going really well. It's just one of them things that happen sometimes. But we've hopefully had our fair share of luck, bad luck this year.
Unless your drop score's gone, so can we be back on the Cambrian with anything to do?
I don't know. We'll have to have a look. We can do something, I'm sure, but I don't know. I haven't even been bothered to look, if I'm honest.
But what a year you guys have had. I mean, Paul Morris, as you know, is the championship coordinator for the Pro Tyre Motorsport UK Asphalt Rally Championship. He's been telling me stories, and he said at times there were just moments like I was just describing to Jonathan Pullen, where you're sat in a car and you're almost just looking across in amazement. And he's been in with quite a few fast people.
Yeah, I don't really...
Flash terror. That's a quote.
Yeah, Paul was out last weekend on the Three Shires as well, and had a good result on that rally, second overall, and really enjoyed himself in the R5 in the Citroen. And yeah, it's good to have him on board and have the experience of him as well. So yeah, still learning though, but we'll get there maybe one day.
The voice of Robert Goff, one of our Silver Star protagonists. Thank you for that. I know it's not the nicest thing to come and talk about. Why did you retire? You know it's coming. Philip Rowlands with Miles Cartwright, a name that you will be familiar with, JP, jumped in at last minute because Phil Woodcock has got COVID and didn't want to pass it on to his driver for obvious reasons. And Miles is someone who knows these stages well and lives up the road.
Absolutely, these are very much his home stages. Quite interesting that his co-driver, the guy he's replaced, I think was 6'4", and Miles is about half of that. And so I think they had a fair amount of adjustment to do with the footrest today to make sure Miles was safely in the car.
Brilliant. So Miles won't be pressing the horn anytime soon today.
I doubt we'll be able to reach it. Yeah.
No getting horny on these Yorkshire stages for Miles Cartwright. Just lives up the road in Stagston. Has been drafted in at last minute. What's it like having someone drafted in at the last minute, Robert, if you've got somebody who's not sat alongside you? Because for anyone watching at home, a lot of people won't have been in a rally car, and you play the PlayStation games, play the Xbox games, and you don't really listen to the co-driver in those. You're kind of doing it as you see, but it doesn't matter if you crash. It is a big part, isn't it, of what you do?
Oh yes, you've got to have utmost trust in your co-driver, really, because things can go wrong pretty quick. Like last night, it was very... difficult in
was that your first night stage?
No. So I did the RAC a couple of years ago, and we did that about a lot. Was it a third of the rally was in the dark there, but it's just so easy to make a mistake. For the driver and the co-driver have got to be concentrating all the time, because it's just last night there was a few famous crash bends, like Mickler's corner in Dalby, that was just thick mud going down into it. And I've done this rally 2 years before and run on with in Dalby, but it was the other way round, so everything just looks totally different, even though it's the same forestry. I've never done it before that way, so yeah, you can never lapse concentration.
How far ahead are you getting your pace notes called? Because you are a quick boy in that Mark II.
I don't know, it's whatever.
Well, coming into this 90 right, it's fairly straight, to be honest. It's a bit of a cheap one, this, but you know, how you're going through the more twisty sections. Take the Woodpecker, for example. Yeah. How many corners ahead are you wanting to be thinking?
Well, I have a memory like a sieve, if I'm honest.
So you know Richard Burns then?
Yeah, well, it depends on preference really, and what the conditions are like. If you're struggling to see, it's more closer up the road, and then if you can see well, it's further up the road. So it just depends on, every driver's different and its preference. I'm normally like it quite early, so if I'd come out at this corner now, we'd know the distance before we'd even come into this corner, and then know the corner as you're coming out of that. So yeah, it's all about preference. Some people like it really immediately straight on the corner. Some people like it before. Some people like two corners in front. It just depends on preference.
If you're watching some in-car at home ever, just have a look, because you can tell when a pair inside a car know each other really well, because the co-driver will just drop in reminders every now and again, and they're watching for concentration, and you can tell when they know when to remind the driver.
Oh yeah, and
they're not just reading the notes, are they? They're kind of reading the situation as well.
They get a feel for the car as well, what the car's doing, and when sometimes some of the co-drivers are wannabe drivers, so they know when you kind of should be braking, if you need to leave the braking a little bit later or a bit earlier, and just to calm it down a little bit.
Quite like Patrick Walsh's in-car for that, because he's been around long enough to know that it doesn't look like this driver's actually going to stop for this corner, so he'll just call it again, just to make sure.
Yeah, Patrick hasn't done any driving events. Like this rally last year, I had Sam Collis with me, and he does a few driving events as well, which he loves, and yeah, he puts his own driver input into it as well, which is good fun. It always helps.
I mean, I was only single venues back in the day, but my co-driver Tom Hutchins, who has done a fair bit in his neck of the woods as well. He used to do that. He'd be like, go on, go on. He'd also grab the handbrake if I wasn't being Larry enough.
Yeah, you sometimes get a few very enthusiastic co-drivers. Years ago, for the likes, you'd get Andrew Sankey from Michael Motor Club, and Phil Clark as well, who's doing the rally today. Well, he was leading a bit ago, so he used to co-drive for me, and he was always very enthusiastic to put their input in. So it was almost that, you know, you can go quick around this corner, quick around there, slow it down here, you know, and that's valuable to a driver where they put their input, and that's why they're in the position that they are now with the experience that they've got.
There's a great, talking to Paul Morris, there's a great bit on, is it Epping, where he's telling Damien Cole off? It goes, Isle of Man it is, and they're in the Darien, and Cole's pushing on, and at one point it gets really Larry. You see Cole just sort of gives Morris a bit of a look, so that was a bit of a do, and Morris gives him the biggest telling off.
Oh, well, yeah, we've had a couple of those. This year there was one on...
Do share. Morris will be watching this like, no, don't share that one.
It was quite funny, because we watched it, and my mum saw it, and afterwards, and she texted me after and saying, "Oh, is that the first domestic you two have had together?" And it was just quite funny at the time, but it was absolutely fine. But things do.
It wasn't nearly enough detail, Robert.
No. Well,
what stays in the car? What goes on in the car stays in the car.
Well, you know.
Unless you share the in-car on YouTube.
Yeah. It was a bit of an entertaining moment, but we were lucky to get away with it. And but Paul's a really good asset to have with me. You know, he's won a lot of rallies, he's won a lot of championships, and you know, sometimes having that sort of head that can win championships well we nearly done quite well this year, but we've had a few mechanical issues and a couple of driver problems as well.
Look, you're in the hunt for a Silver Star title with people who've won a Silver Star title before. That says something.
Yeah, I suppose it does. Yeah, and like the Woodpecker just gone was a bit of a disaster, but that happens. But like Nicky,
at least you got to Collis's wedding on time. Well,
I didn't manage to actually, but I would have loved to go. But yeah, we gave Sam and Julie their wedding present yesterday, which was a really good Yorkshire present, which was quite funny. But Sam's not feeling too good today, so he's got a bit of sickness bug or cold or man flu. It could be.
Ironically, I made a joke earlier that knowing Sam, he was probably still hungover from his wedding, and if anyone had seen him this morning, they probably thought I was right then.
Well, they might have done. Yeah.
Can you share what the Yorkshire present was, or is that a private matter?
No, it was quite funny, really. So
I'm a Yorkshireman, and so is JP.
Well, it was some of Bannister's finest potatoes. so we thought, yeah, that'd be all right. So
that's brilliant. And you also gave a co-driver a sack of spuds for a wedding present, which is also a joke in its own right.
The funniest thing was when he took them, he actually seat belted them up to make sure that they didn't fall off the seat. So yeah, it was good. It was funny.
Love that. That's the voice of Robert Garve, who this year has been in the fight, might still be in the fight. We haven't done the maths yet for the Silver Star title with Paul Morris alongside. And thank you for chatting to us there, because I know there's sometimes nothing worse. And we haven't actually met. I've only seen you at the side of a car, so I don't see people. If you push your face up like this, I tend to recognise people. But people without helmet crush on their faces, who I haven't met yet. We're doing the in-car next year, the end of stage. We'll get to know everyone again, and I'll get to know people's faces. But Wayne was like, it's Robert Goff. I was like, Wayne, he hasn't got a helmet on. Which one is he? Such is the life of someone who stands at the side of the stage and sees everyone hurtle past at between 80 and 110 miles per hour. Border Counters was definitely at the top end of that. That was one heck of a ride for you boys. Yeah, it was a quick rally. Really loved the stages. Possibly some of the smoothest that we've seen all year, really. Yorkshire stages are pretty smooth as well. Like they always used to call Kielder, Killer Kielder, and it's far from that now compared to the Welsh stages that they're about now. But they're really looking after the roads, and I don't know what they're doing, but they're doing a very good job of the conditions of the forestry up there. I think that's an important point to note, because we all lament how expensive rallying is and that the costs are going up on entry fees. But actually, when you're getting better roads and they're doing the work that's required, then I don't suppose there's as much of a complaint to be had. JP, we talk a lot about pace notes, and we've done that a lot today, but you remember the days when pace notes hadn't exactly been invented. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Robert's talking there about his time with his navigators and their ability on the pace notes, but his dad was always driving blind, really, at the top of his
fantastic efforts of BTRD. Actually, did he win the? Did your dad win the BTRD? Certainly very close.
Second a couple of times, I think. Welsh Championship, definitely. But he didn't like to strain too far from home. I don't know if that was because of the nature of the roads and maps and things like that, but I don't know. But like we were talking about it with Steve.
You wouldn't be caught on a bike in a forest miles from home then?
The bikes weren't too good then. But everyone had their strongest events, you know. Banner's always been strong up here, and it was the local events were always stronger because the maps weren't as good as they were, and that's why you always used to get strong national events, because the map for the RAC and everything else, because the maps weren't and the detail wasn't there, so they had to try and learn the forest as best as they could.
What was interesting, I think, was watching back then when it was blind, was seeing the different driving techniques. It's so different now when you guys are committing to the notes. Interesting to see it this morning. So many people could almost take a racing line on some of the bends, whereas when it's blind, you don't always know, is this a square, is this a fast? And so it generally meant that the car had to be sort of flicked around a little bit first, and sometimes overcommitted into the bend just to make sure it's safe, or keep the car rocking slightly. So it was a very different technique to today now.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, because they did go a lot more sideways. Even watching people like Roger Clark on the Isle of Man, they were setting the car up, like you say, to be able to then flick it around and do different things with it if it wasn't quite as they expected. That makes a lot of sense.
That's it. That's exactly what they were doing, and it made for really, really good watching. But however, it's probably faster now because the notes are there. The driver's confident if they've got a really good co-driver like Paul, where you can trust that what he's saying is absolutely right. The commitment must be fantastic, and I think we do see faster stage times today. It'd be interesting if you could match a stage and say put Richard Goff's times against Robert's times on the same stage in somewhere like Havron, or one of the famous stages on the plains where these guys know it fairly well, but just to see what that contrast would be. Technology with tyres is probably a lot better these days too. It'd probably be a bit different, but nevertheless, different techniques without the notes.
There's an angle in there, isn't there? If somebody has a rally stage available for a short test, we get yes.
Blind event. Well, like when you look in Finland and stuff like that, they have to do up to so much rallying completely blind. Yeah. Yeah, so
in order to get a license, or
I'm not sure. I was listening to a podcast of one of the rally drivers a bit ago, and yeah, they were talking about their career and how everything was, and it's only up to a certain stage that you get to, until it's on notes, so they go from blind straight to notes.
I would question how blind, given that I did an interview with Nicky Grist at the Alton Park WRC stage a few years ago, and he was telling me a story where I went out with Kankanen, and they went for a walk the night before the rally, and I mean, I'll never tell it as good as Nicky does, but he said, you are disappeared off into the bushes, and he thought he'd gone for a wee or whatever, and he came back out and he went, we're sorted for tomorrow morning, boyo, in a Finnish accent. He just said, that's it, walk over. They went back. So they're coming down, and Nicky called whether it was a chicane or it was slowing down for a kind of like a bit of like a kink around a tree, and Uar just went straight through the undergrowth, and he'd gone through and just cleared it all out. So I'm not sure how blind these blind Finnish rally drivers actually go.
Well, no, it's like certain areas have hotspots of drivers where you look at round Malton and round this area there's a lot, and then you look round in Ludlow there's a lot, and it's just two ends of the country, and you can fill a top 10 of rally drivers from two areas in it. It's quite interesting, really. But it's like Ludlow Motor Club that I'm a member of. It's a small club with, I'm not sure how many members, about 80 members, and like there's Joe Price, Henry Grean, myself, Dad. In the past there was Andy Burton, Mark Perrott, Sean Gardner, Perry Gardner, there's a lot of good drivers over a lot of years, and it's probably the same in motor clubs around here as well.
Well, as you can see, we've had a bit of a gap in the action, but I hope you'll agree that it was fortuitous that we would have two very knowledgeable competitors and authors with us on the stages to talk us through. If you've just tuned in, that's Robert Goff and Jonathan Pullen, who've joined me stage side for the final stage of Trackrod Rally Yorkshire. And normally in those big gaps, we'd sort of call it and we'd come back on the stream, but you know, that was great. We really enjoyed that, and I can hear rally cars back on the stage there.
Well, if the car comes, fair enough. I was going to say I did an interview with Sam Collis just recently for
I saw that. It was for the Rally Sport News, wasn't it? Tell us about that, because I haven't read it yet.
Oh, he's such a character as Sam, and again, been around for many years, and he was saying how Banner was one of the first people to influence him. Seeing Banner coming out of Michaelis Bend, absolutely on it with the back end into the greenery, and his face pressed against the windscreen. And he said that was it. He was hooked from that moment on. You know, yeah.
I love Sam. Although he's not from them, he's from Chesterfield. He obviously lives now in the Hull area, and I've known him for a lot of years. One of my favourite people in rallying, but he's always funny, and yet. Graham Hay and Carrie Bates, we'll talk about Clan Crusaders in a minute, JP, now that Carrie's just gone past, and you know why. But Sam is one of those people that, a bit like Morris actually, he's life and soul of the party, and then all of a sudden, game face on. I noticed it with Morris with Steve Wood actually, because I haven't really seen Morris as a or interviewed Morris as a co-driver, but I stuck the microphone across at the end of one of the Three Shires stages to speak to him, and he looked at me as if to say, not now, Woodford. Yeah. And I was like, wow, just like Sam, he can go from being like the biggest clown and joker to suddenly, right, we're in and we're on this now. And I did a road rally in Beaver a few years ago, and Sam was in one of the cars right up at the front. I was getting lost somewhere at the back, and his game face is amazing.
Yeah.
Is that Robin Shuttleworth just going through there in the Mark 1, I think, isn't it? Yeah, Malcolm Smithson alongside. I'll recognise that. Escort Mexico, anywhere particularly being driven like that. Those two, again, stalwarts of the BTRDA Historic Cup, and always go well on these fast stages in that Mark 1. Again, another unarched Mark 1. Clan Crusaders. Yeah. I always talk about Clan Crusaders for obvious reasons, for anyone who knows me. But Bill Bates is a good excuse to talk about them. Carrie's old man.
Yeah. Well, I don't know much about him actually. You're going to have to tell me.
What? Yeah, how can you be an accomplished and celebrated rally author and not know about Clan Crusaders? Second overall behind Roger Clark on the 72 Manx. First overall on the Tour of Mull with Alan Connolly. You know, he's a. I do. And you've got Mike Curry, who's normally in with Bob Bean. He was a Clan man back in the day.
He was, yeah. No, they were a fantastic machine. I was joking. Andy Dawson was absolutely unbelievable in a Clan Crusader and could really mix it with the BDAs. And it's just one.
Lucy Wigley just realised there was a rev limiter in there, and she used it. Emma Cooper alongside, and one of the very few Citroen C2 R2s out there competing at the moment, and that's a car that I always talk about as well, because they're cracking little things. They sound amazing. But so what else do you know about Clans, JP?
Oh well, I remember Alan Connolly. I remember him out on the Motoring News events. Again, very, very quick driver. What always amazed me was the navigator Martin Holmes was a very tall guy.
He was car and car conversions man, wasn't he?
He was. He used to write for Cars and Car Conversions, and often took the sponsorship with him from Withers of Winsford to the Cars and Cars and Car Conversion. And he was a very tall guy. How he fitted into that Clan is beyond me.
Is a man that I am really looking forward to seeing out on the stages again. I think that's the ex-Matt Edwards MG ZR, and that is...
Steve Black car,
yeah, Steve Black as well, and that's the SPG, of course. And that is Joe Everett, who won Rally First, and in those days won it emphatically in his own Rally First MG ZR. And Richard Wise sent me a message during the week to say, look, just to let you know, Joe's looking for some support, but he is hoping to do the BTRDA niche. I tell you what, we get Joe Everett out here in the 1400s. We get Dave Brick. We get a couple of others. Matt Smith maybe in that little Proton. He puts a 1400 back in it. This championship's going to go. It's just going to spread like wildfire, and all of a sudden we'll be back in the heyday. As long as we can keep this running order at the front of the field, we need that.
That's crucial, isn't it? Yeah. It's got to be affordable. The stages have to be in great condition, and for these guys to get some backing, it'd be really helpful for them as well if they were at the front. And getting the coverage from you guys as well, it's really important that they can get some screen time from you as well. So yeah, good luck to them. Let's hope we can do that.
We talked about Rally First as well. Next up on the road should be, it's no longer Rally First, it's Lewis Hooper who has converted, or developed, we should say, that Rally First Micra into 1400S. But dare I say it, he needn't have spent the money because he was so quick in the Rally First car. He came third in the Fuchs Lubricants Bronze Star category on last year's Trackrod Rally Yorkshire. And that was a Rally First Micra. Here it is, just 1400S, and now he is a force to be reckoned with. Rhys Edwards alongside, thumbs up once again. Those guys absolutely love their rallying. They had a really big accident on the Border Counties where they went into a ditch, just dead stop. Straight back out of the next round, not put off at all, and straight firing themselves into a battle for the lead once again after rebuilding the car. And they're always smiling, they love it.
Yeah, lovely. Lads having fun. It's all about any of us having a bit of fun, and affordable motorsport, which is super to see.
Affordable comes in different categories. There's Steve Orman-Smith, Peter Scott alongside. There's a name you could tell some stories about as well.
How many rallies has Peter done? His experience and the drives that he's had, the rides that he's had, absolutely astonishing.
Far back as Billy Coleman in the checkered flag Stratos days, and right up to modern days, doing a lot of the hero stuff and a lot of the kind of Mini Miglia style Targa stuff, isn't he?
He doesn't seem to tire of it, does he? Just keeps going and going and going.
Doing a rally in a 250 GTO recently. That's a bit exotic for talking about on the track rod, but
well, he likes variety, and fair play to him. I mean, with all that experience, I'm sure there's lots of drivers who are very pleased to have him alongside. So, yeah.
Steve Orman-Smith has jumped out of his Mitsubishi B13 that he drives on the asphalt into that Escort on this round, and that's pretty cool as well. There you go, Steve Ward. Phil Sandham, one of the Yorkshire Rally Mafia. Indeed, you didn't need to point to that. I've got the book at home, JP. Just tell us about, just for anyone who hasn't got the book, doesn't know what the Yorkshire Rally, they've heard him mention it and thinking I'm just talking tripe. There's a real story to be had, isn't there, in this neck of the woods?
Absolutely. Corky Ward is one of those guys.
Why is it Corky, by the way?
Do you know, I really don't know. I don't think he knows either. It's just something that has been around, and he's always been called.
You could have a chapter in the next book you write on nicknames.
Yeah. I should just make it up.
Unearth some myths and legends in the nicknames.
Yeah, no, I've no idea where the name came from, but the Yorkshire Rally Mafia was just a name. I don't know where it came from, probably from the newspapers. We don't know. We think it was probably Motoring News that sort of came with this theory that you get a lot of Yorkshire Rally drivers all competing together, staying in the same hotels, sharing the same service crew, swapping navigators, sometimes swapping cars, and that's really where it came from.
Love it. It's well worth getting a copy of. Stephen Benson, Ollie Benson alongside, giving it big licks in that Mark II. It is.
Oh, what a beautiful sound that is. I think Steve was very quick back in the early 80s. I think he's been out of it for some years, and now back with this beautiful Mark II, doesn't he? Sound fantastic out there.
It does. Just remind us where we can get the book. You can get it by messaging you on Facebook, but it's on Amazon as well, isn't it?
I'm afraid it's all sold out now, Paul. Yeah. I know of just one that's for sale in a bookshop, and they're asking quite a price for it. But I'm afraid they're well and truly sold out now.
Congratulations, because I think that's a really nice, that's a real achievement.
Thank you. I am very proud of that book, actually, but I don't want to print anymore. I wanted to make it a limited edition. I think it's great that people who have it will enjoy it.
It's like Yuck's Fast Book. I've been trying to get a copy of that. It's like, it almost adds a bit of legend to the book that the people actually sought after as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, some of these books, you know, it's fantastic to see. The Dave Orrick book, can you remember what that's called, Paul? No. There's a Motoring News book out. Night Moves, thank you.
Yeah. Producer Wayne with the goods.
Absolutely.
He's like a ninja. He just sits there quietly every now and again, just comes out with some magic.
Just comes out with a goodie every now and again. No, absolutely.
There we go. Richard Axel, Alan Harriman. You were talking about the Porsches earlier. Nice to see them out, and that's a glorious one.
Yeah, aren't they just? It's just lovely to see something so spectacular and sounding so good. We were talking about the importance of noise. What a noise a Porsche 911 makes. But yeah, going back to the books, I know that Night Moves book, I've seen them on eBay, sort of up to £400, these books now. Yeah, some people pay this because they treasure the books. They mean a lot to them.
I was winding you up when that first came out, your Yorkshire Rally Mafia, about doing a a voiced-over version, which, there we go, Mike Reed, John Millington. Perfect timing, just as we're talking about your sold-out Yorkshire Rally Mafia book, and there's, with the Reed Group emblazoned on the rear boot lid, a man who still has the moves.
Yeah, he and his brother, actually, Steve Reed. Steve was a very quick driver too. Mike's been around doing a lot of, he started off really with road rallies and moved into stage events.
Nice bloke as well.
Very nice bloke. You know where
Yorkshire rally drivers are just fun, aren't they?
you know where you stand with a lot of the Yorkshire lads, don't you? You know, they're here for a bit of fun and they're very blunt.
So you don't fancy doing an audio book then?
I'm not sure. I'll consider anything, but it's just a question of time, Paul. I'm working on so many projects at the moment. I'm really enjoying going.
Tell us about any of them.
Well, the photographs I mentioned earlier, there are thousands to go through. I mean, it's a big old job. Thanks to James Giddings, by the way, I must say, who's helping me tremendously. We're changing these negatives into digital photographs, and it's a big job.
It could be a photo book on the way at some point.
I don't know. We'll have to look at the options. I need to talk to Peter, because really Peter Smith's photographs, but it's just very kind of him to let us dig them all out and see what there is there. And
it'd be lovely to take over a local art exhibition or something, wouldn't it?
Oh, wouldn't it just? Yeah. I'm not sure I want anybody else to come in there. I just want to look at myself.
Maybe display a couple of relevant cars in there as well.
Oh, wow, that would be great, wouldn't it? Yeah. Get Ethel in there. Oh. Yeah.
You know what? I'm offering you now, if you need any help with something like that, a project like that, I'm right behind you, because that would be fantastic.
Yeah, we'll get the clan out there as well. Yeah.
Get some theatre going on with rally. We need the theatre back, and the voice that you hear there is Jonathan Pullen, who has been blinging as Colin Blunt, wrestling with that Fiesta SC out of this 90 right here in Langdale, being caught as well. Oh, by very sideways Mark 1. Wow. Yeah, no. Yeah, we could get some theatre back out there, couldn't we? And you've been bringing the theatre to the pages. I'm really chuffed for you that that's book sold out. I didn't realise, actually. Yeah. That was me promoting it away earlier.
No, I think that's very kind of you, Paul. I've got to consider what to do next. There's lots of options. Quite fancy doing a modern book, really, because I've sort of concentrated on the theatre of the old motoring news rallies and the old stage events and the old drivers, and it'd be quite nice to do something modern, something current. So that's a consideration. I'm enjoying doing a bit of writing for monthly magazines and that sort of thing, and going through these photographs. So yeah, I've got plenty on at the moment.
I'm still thinking audio book of some of these old books would be wicked, and especially if you got some of the old voices in there as well, it'd be quite cool, wouldn't it, to read some of the memories out?
Yeah, well, your conscience, a regular visitor around my house, he would make a great job of that, wouldn't he?
Yuki's absolutely brilliant. He's the only man I know that has such a thick, rich Yorkshire accent and types on Facebook exactly the way he speaks. I love it.
Yeah, he does, yeah. I'm not sure how often he gets banned. But
David Dobson, by the way, Brian Hodgson coming past with their thumbs up in that Unarched Mark II. I always mention it if it's Unarched, and David used to take the mick out of me for that. He was like, you like my Unarched Escort, don't you, Paul? Yeah. But there weren't many of them at that point. Now they've come back in vogue.
Yeah, absolutely. But he's got a nice mantra as well, hasn't he, there? That's a very bonny car as well. But he seems to prefer the Escort. He's
pretty easy to find parts for, to be fair.
Yeah, that's probably true, and he's a very committed driver, and he's great to watch, and a hard trier. He and his brother are both real great drivers, great characters too.
Back to Yuck. I saw him at Melbourne, and he was selling his fast book. It was years and years ago, right. And I saw him down there, and the first time I ever met him, and I went and got a picture with him. My dad took a picture on an old disposable camera of me and Yuck, and he was like, "Hey, old lad." Dave Forrest, Jamie Forrest. I don't know if you saw the picture on Facebook of those lads last night. Finished the 12-miler in Dolby. You'll be impressed with this, Robert Goff. And they had, I don't know, you might be. They had, normally you get maybe handed a tinny from one of the service crew. They had Guinness in Guinness glasses, Stella in Stella Artois glasses, all lined up just like a bar. I was very impressed. That's dedication, isn't it?
Very much so, yeah. How would they stop spilling it if they were driving, but never mind.
Oh, I like to think it's at the end, but they, talking of Yorkshire, they were like, this was mint. That's a good word to describe these stages, isn't it?
Aye, mint, yeah. And that's very much Yuck, that is. I mean, he'll pop round most weeks for a cup of coffee. Go on, JP, get kettle on, let's have some toast. Where's that Bovril? Get Bovril out, let's have Bovril. not too much, not too much, not too much.
I can hear him doing it.
No, and where was I going with that? And he'd lose track of his conversation. So many lovely stories to hear from Yuck. And
is he currently on a Facebook ban? I haven't heard from him for a while.
No, I think he's still there. But yeah, he's got so many stories. And I think in fact he found a picture of him crashing on Cadwell Park just recently, didn't he? I think just a few days ago he picked one up. I think he still won the rally. He just sort of nudged an Armco barrier and won the rally by about a second, I think he said, from some guy in a Sapphire at the time. So it was a bit 91, 92, somewhere around there. But yeah, he's a great character, and I any time to have a chat with Yuck is just, he's got so many stories, knows so many people, been in the business for a long, long time. Still has his Mark II, by the way. It's still tucked away. Yeah, it's still tucked away. I don't know whether we can persuade him to get it out again now, but he won't let that go.
Yeah, that would be good. There's a few cars that are nestling away. I mean, Andy Burton was mentioned earlier when Rob was talking to us. There's a few cars that you'd quite like to, maybe not even restore, just keep as they are and just keep them sat there in a nice museum somewhere. Cars that tell a story of British rallying or something.
I think I saw a picture of Andy's storage of his cars, and they're just under covers in a barn somewhere, aren't they? And they're just fantastic cars. What a clever engineer, and what a great driver too. We miss him.
Oh, absolutely. Dan Mendels's retired, has he?
I didn't hear a rev limiter on it. when he came past us in Langdale, he was really giving it some, really quick and committed. But yeah, it was interesting. I didn't hear a rev limiter. He was certainly going some. So that's sad news.
I don't know what has happened to Seb Perez on Dolby, because he's dropped a bit of time to 20 seconds to where he was. So he's gone from second to third or fourth now, I think.
Tell you what, that is an angle, isn't it? In that 190, we're talking about cars that were a handful. If you think a Sapphire Cos was a handful, imagine how much that is.
Yeah, he can make that work, can't he? Mago has that ability to get hold of anything and make them work. He's such a clever engineer, and he loves the challenge of something a bit different in the forest, and that's what we love.
Steve Magson that you saw through there in the 190 Cosworth is definitely a rev limiter in that Escort, and not many gears, I don't think.
No, that doesn't sound good. It sounds like you can go up a gear, maybe stuck in gear. Yeah, I'm sad to hear about Dan Mennell.
That is a shame. You were talking earlier about how much he'd impressed you, especially through Dalby last night. Yeah, that was Tony Thompson there, Matthew Thompson alongside, just coasting through this last stage. But sometimes you've got a 13 miler and you're nearly there, you just get it home, don't you?
Yeah, maybe that's what he's going to try and do. Maybe he's going to try and see the finish, which would be wonderful, wouldn't it?
It sounded like, I think it's just a gear he's missing, isn't it?
Yeah, it did sound like it, yeah.
So Daniel Mennell then missing, and Seb Perez having a bit of drama in that last stage as well. Forgive me, I've been so engrossed in stories with Robert Goff and Jonathan Pullin here and thank you guys for joining me there, because sometimes grabbing people at the side of the stage is not ideal for those people, but it's mostly ideal for me, because it means that we get to have a different voice and a different take on things. Just looking down the order here, I thought we'd lost George Lepley, actually. Oh no, sorry, that is sorry, it is retirement that you're looking at, because Robert Goff's on there and all. Not to rub that in, but he is stood next to me. Yes, here's a car that we should talk about. Oh, there we go. Karen. I would say Karen first because of Luke. Nigel Jenkins. Karen Jenkins. And you know what? The registration says Fab, and today will go down as a Fab day to them, because I think they're catching Dave Watkins in that X-Works Mark I Escort, because they are on their way to a championship victory. I think we can say with some confidence that there is our 2023 Fuchs Lubricants Bronze Star Championship drive. That green Vauxhall Nova that has led the pack so early on, and sometimes, as it was written in the BTRDA news release this week. Often the hardest hurdle is the last one you've got to pass. You know, you can do the job, but you've just got to get it over the line, and they've done just that. So I think as long as they can get through this final couple of miles of Langdale, they are your Fuchs Lubricants Bronze Star champions for 2023. Matthew Robinson, Sam Collis, great to see that pair out. Just Dave Watkins Mark 1, it's X-Works, it had a Lotus in it originally, it's got a BD in it I think now. Just tell me about that car.
Certainly X-Works. Dave has the ability to
Is it a Mikola car? I think it is, isn't it?
It is an ex-Mikola car, and probably 1000 X.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
And it was a twin cam back in those days, wasn't it?
And typical of Borum, of course, they developed them. They started off as twin cams, and often then they put a BDA in a bit later on. And I think Dave has just sort of religiously followed it's from its very heritage and replicating it very, very well with whatever he can. He always goes for genuine bits.
That's what we love about Dave Watkins. He gets photos of even the smallest details on the dashboard, and he's told me about this before, and he will. Oh, there we go. There you go. Ben Jemison loves these stages so much he's taking some souvenirs home with him, a bit of Marshall tape and a bit of chicane there. It was Matthew Robinson clouting the chicane through our first stage, Gale Rig. He, not hard, he just dismantled it really, nice and gently.
I'm not sure if that first one was Matthew, or was that his brother, was that Andrew?
Was that Andrew Robinson? Sorry, yeah.
He's brought his old car back.
Of course it is, sorry, apologies, I did that earlier as well. You can forgive me. I mean, I see a Robinson sideways interview, and I assume one thing, particularly when the big news is that Matthew Robinson and Sam Collis are back.
I know, it's fantastic, isn't it? Real hard tryers, but his brother's a real good tryer too, and he owned that car originally. I believe he sold it for a little while and now bought it back, and it's great to see him back out on the stages. Interesting to see Ben with a bit of undergrowth.
Very neat and tidy, isn't he?
Yeah, he's very tidy. It's not like him actually. He's very, very.
You know why I think that is? He's a radio-controlled car champion racer, and you've got to be very precision when you're doing that. So I think that has something to do with it.
Yeah, you're probably right.
He's probably going to be just chortling at this when he gets home. Like, no, it's nothing to do with it, Woodford. But it sounds good, doesn't it?
A great theory, and we could say it anyway, can't we?
I'm allowed to come up with theories at the side of the stage. There's no one here to tell me I'm wrong, although luckily JP did point out that I had the wrong of the two Robinson brothers. Yeah, the retirements list is an all-star cast, I'm afraid to say. Steve Black's out as well. Tim Pearcey, we were looking for him earlier on the results, also out. Steve was out. Dad having a bit of fun in the car that his son took the Pro Tyre Motorsport UK Asphalt Rally Championship with just a few weeks ago, which I think is really nice. Chaz Gisby, thanks for the coverage. No problem. It's good to have you guys all watching, and hello to you if you're watching at the NY500 or indeed the Motorist Cafe. There's a bit of a delay on our footage, so I can talk about something and then watch it through again. The danger is I end up talking about it again, because that was a great line there. Phil Jobson, Peter Johnston in the Mark 1 Escort. Of course it was. Shouldn't have needed to watch that back twice in order to confirm it. So I'm going to have a look through the results from this stage. Chris Squires, Sean Hughes alongside. That's a good looking Mark 2, isn't it?
An arts, of course, Paul.
There we go.
Just mention that as an art. Yeah, again, what a beautiful looking car. Lovely colour. Nice to have something a little bit different, isn't it? Yeah.
So I've got the Puma ST in a colour remarkably like that, Azura blue, like the RS blue.
It looks really nice. Yeah, nice to see the sky out.
Allied polymer-ish and driven like it as well, with the CB aerial on the roof as well. That's classic, isn't it?
It is classic, yeah, indeed, yeah. What were you saying, Rob? What was you were saying?
So from Jason leads it by 8.3 seconds with a total of 48.04.9, and then
there's Jason Pritchard in the historics.
And then down to 9th place is only 42 seconds behind. So it's pretty close, really. You could. There'll be some quite good action coming in this last stage, considering it's about 12 miles long. It'll be everyone will be having a go, really, I would think.
That's the beauty of a long stage, Paul, is when there's the mileage there, the really quick guys can just find that extra second or two and pull something back. And of course, you've got to keep those concentration levels going on a long stage. Easy to lose concentration, get a half spin, just slightly get your braking.
Matthew Hurst and Declan Deer earlier. It was only a 6-miler, but it opened the day with a 6-miler, and it's a fast stage.
And it changes everything. So, yeah, very easy to make a mistake, and that can change the picture completely.
Talking about quick men who know how to pull seconds back, Elliot Payne, Tom Woodburn through that last stage. Dolby, certainly the story of the championship at this stage. Ben Cree, Bob Wiggins, of course, in the Corsa here in the MRF Tyres BTRDA Rally Championship. Yeah, Elliot Payne, Tom Woodburn putting out a 9.5-second lead now over Aaron Newby and Jamie Edwards in that Skoda. Now, at this point, Aaron has got to keep his head. At this stage, the championship goes Elliot's way, but Aaron has 9.5 seconds. There's not often you've got a chance to make that up over one stage, but in a 13-mile stage, it's eminently possible. If just even a half spin like JP just mentioned, David Henderson 16.4 behind them, so he's not going to get involved in that championship battle at this stage. Russ Thompson, Stephen Ling will be watching very closely, back in 4th place. There is a gear in there somewhere, and it was almost left on the stage in front of us. Sorry, yeah, Phil and Mick Squires, of course, wasn't it? In that red Mark II. So, yeah, Russ Thompson and Stephen Ling really just watching up ahead now. They're a minute back from that lead in 4th place, but really the championship at this stage for them was an outside shot. They're in B13. The last time a B13 won the BTRD outright, it was Sean Gardner in 2013, I want to say, maybe 2012, a very long time ago. It was possible again this year thanks to extraordinary performances from Russ and Stephen in that blue Mitsubishi Evo 9. But at this stage, the championship battle, our eyes are on that 1st and 2nd spot. Elliot Payne, Tom Woodburn, I think, take the championship with one more maximum this year to add to their absolutely phenomenal campaign. Tommy Meadows, Laura Coolidge alongside in that 208 R2. They've been going well today. Just waiting for the times to come through from this last stage of the day. If you're just tuning in, don't worry. You can watch the 2-wheel drive field through in just a few minutes' time when we end this broadcast and start with the 4-wheel drives. But I do recommend you stay with us for the 4-wheel drive because we have a title showdown going on here in Yorkshire. But I am excited to confirm that Nigel Jenkins and Kaz Jenkins are showing as posting a time which puts them out in the lead of the Fuchs Lubricants Bronze Star category here at Trackrod Rally Yorkshire, the penultimate round of the 2023 MRF Tyres BTRDA Rally Championship. That is the dream for Kaz because she goes on holiday next week and she didn't fancy having to prepare for another rally to get that championship in the bag. Although I wouldn't be surprised if we do see that pair out on the Cambrian for a bit of a championship tour back to Wales. But there we go. The Fuchs Lubricants Bronze Star came down to this, the penultimate round. And you have to say, it really, at most points in the year, didn't look like going anywhere else other than
Chris Ingram and Paul Turner there. Yeah, that's a lovely car. It's seen a lot of work over the years. It's been with some quick drivers like Tim Metcalf, Roger Kilty, some fine owners, but it's a well-maintained car. It's a beautiful car.
If I was getting a Mark II and putting it in works colours, it would probably be Eton Yale.
Doesn't it look great in blue? Just absolutely gorgeous, yeah. You were talking about winning championships and the importance of the driver. Ernie Graham. The importance of the driver from a co-driver's point of view. On occasion, I've been with a really good driver. I always worry about messing up, just making a mistake at the final time control, not seeing the control, getting something wrong on the car. It's those last-minute things that just, as a co-driver, you've got to double check again, and it's not over till it's over, as they say. Yeah. So it's a big deal for the driver, but it is for the co-driver too.
Ernie and Karen went past us there. They've been going well today in that Uniflow-esque Mark 1.
Yeah, Roger Clark type colours, absolutely, yeah. And again, a great competitor, been around for a few years now, supported the historic side very well, and a keen competitor. Yeah.
Here in the BTRDA, regular competitors here in the MRF Tyres BTRDA Historic Cup as well. So we were talking about that championship fight. Nick Dobson, Steve Pugh, Steve, absolutely delighted to be out here on the stages again after I mentioned it earlier, his disappointment at not getting out on the Woodpecker and missing out on doing Kerry 40 years after he first wanted to do it. Another pair who are just a couple of characters. Steve Pugh's photos as well are wicked. They tell a story.
Absolutely. I know Steve very well. He's been great for me. If ever I've gone over to Wales, he's told me all the places to go and watch, and he knows those forests inside out. And a great competitor again, a great character. He loves Yorkshire. He loves coming up to Yorkshire. He loves these stages. He can't wait. And I know this is, I think it's one of the events for the year for Steve. He just loves to be up.
He was extremely excited on Facebook this week to be actually back out, because I saw him on Ceredigion and he's gutty because he just found out they weren't going to be going to Ludlow for the Woodpecker. Another man who I mentioned earlier, but I want to mention again, and I'm sure you would know why, Gav Heseltine, a man who should be here. It's very sad that he's not, but he loved these stages in this rally.
He did, and a prominent character who everybody knew him, and he's sadly missed because, well-known guy.
Well, it's nice to see Alan McDowell out,
Yes.
still doing the business, although I think the wind has been knocked out of his sails somewhat, and understandably so. But Gav was a big member of North Humberside Motor Club. He used to help with the organisation of rallies like this and had been around, and if he wasn't in the car, he'd be doing something very important out of it. So there's a man who, at the moment, is a fair way back in the R2 Rally Cup, Liam Clark, with Tony Edwards alongside. Robert Proudlock in the Opel Adam, who you'll see from shortly, has been really pushing on today. There's been, at times, not much to pick between the two of them, but Liam will now more than ever be ruining that disastrous off that he had just in front of our cameras on the Woodpecker last time out. Real shame for him. Here's a local man who has been putting in a shift today in that ITIS Spectrum Mark II with Glenn Thomas alongside. 18th overall after the stages last night, and a Mark II in historic spec has not really been his thing in the last few years, but it hasn't taken him long to get up there, has it?
He's really enjoying that car. It's a beautiful car, Paul. I mean,
It's got a very nice unarched one as well.
Yes, he has. Stop talking about unarched cars. They are an absolute beauty, that car. Nick Carr's built it, a very, very clever engineer, and producing some superb cars, of course.
Former BTRDA Rally First champion who has gone on to run a very successful preparation firm, and it's building cars that come within the top 20 at Nick's age in a historic field like that last night through Dolby.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, he built Richard Jordan's car as well. I think the virtual replica cars.
Well, I think we can probably say that the build prep helped a lot during the incident that Richard suffered as well with James at the last rally. So, again, you never want to see it, but a good tribute to your work when you can have an accident at that speed. And I have seen a video of the accident. And to come out of it, I know there were some injuries for James, but to come out of it as well as they did says a lot about the build quality.
Yeah, absolutely. So Nick's very, very good builder. His workshops are immaculate, and his standards are extremely high. He buys only the best.
Joe Sturdy, who was Nick's co-driver in the BTRDA, and Ken's son, is one of Max Verstappen's engineers, so you can imagine that Joe's probably influenced a little bit of that clinical prep.
Absolutely, can't get better than that, can you? No, so I'm impressed, and Nick's father, Rob Carr, used to compete against back in the 2000s. We both had similar escorts. We used to compete against each other, and Rob was a fine competitor, and he'd be very proud to see his cars doing so well, his son's cars doing so well right now. His
mum was out there earlier enjoying herself by the side of the stage as well, and she was rightly proud. Mark Edwards there in the... Was Mark Edwards that I saw going past? Wasn't it there? Mark Bentley, sorry, and Edward Bentley in the Mark II. Come back to the BTRDA fight. Lewis Hooper coming through 5th place overall in the Fuchs Lubricants Bronze Star at the end of this Langdale stage. Yeah, I was talking earlier about Jeremy and the fact that we just seen that Mark 1 go through. I kind of wish he was still out in the Datsun.
Do you? Yeah. Well, he's great in an escort too. I remember him leading the Roger Albert Clark a few years ago. He's a very, very capable driver. But yeah, the Datsun, it was something different, wasn't it? And again, what a committed driver. He'd have been bouncing off the banks in the Datsun as well, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I was trying to think of a guy. I remember Mike Collins, who had a Datsun. He was in the historic rally car register. We used to meet at Brotherton when I was a kid with my dad's Mark II Cortina rally cars. There was Who did we used to meet with? There was Mike Jackson used to meet us, and he has some stories. Mike Collins, but Mike Collins built a Datsun 240Z. I've not heard of him since, actually.
Sorry, Paul. I'm not sure about that. Mike Jackson, of course, I know well.
Yes. Warren Phyllis Girk, what a boy. I I worked at the MKM Stadium most recently. Before that stadium was there, they used to run the North Humberside stages too then. You used to have a start set up, and I remember I've got pictures of the 6R4 on a disposable camera, Warren Phyllis Girk. And
he still has that car. It still has it, yeah, he still has it. I was lucky enough to go and have a look at his workshop and had a look at his collection. He still has that beautiful car. And somebody he took for a ride at, I think was it Castle Combe, where it's certainly one of the occasions when you can take some passengers around that will make a sort of donation towards charity, and this guy was so chuffed to get a ride in Warren's 6R4, but he was this very talented artist, and he did a fantastic drawing, and I don't know if it's a watercolour or beautiful job. When I saw it on Warren's wall in his office, I thought that's a photograph, and then when I got closer I realised that it was a painting that this guy had done, and Warren told me the story, and we had a really beautiful picture of this car. But Warren was a former BTRDA winner as well, of course, wasn't he? Yeah. So another great competitor from Yorkshire, Paul. From Yorkshire.
I remember watching the North Humberside stages when I was a kid, and that was always a highlight, seeing that Metro 6R4 of Warren Phyllis Girk. And remember, as a kid, I couldn't say his name. Just things like that stick in your mind. So I've managed to say his name these days. I've grown up now, but he's got rid of his Metro 6R4, which is the same. Some things should never change.
No, absolutely. And wouldn't it be lovely to see a few more 6R4s out? I think is it 6r4.com? They have a great organisation where they'll dig out a few of these lovely cars every now and again. So if you're lucky enough to get to see one or even get a ride in one.
I'm lucky enough to have driven one. I've driven Gary Hewitt's at Alton Park. I cut my honeymoon short for it, and I'm not sure that Mrs. Wood has ever properly forgiven me, if I'm really honest.
Sure,
but it was at the NY5. It was parked at the NY500 now at the minute. So anyone who, if you've been watching from there, hello to you. And if you are in this neck of the woods, you're not native to North Yorkshire, and you're going back home, and you're probably not likely to come back for some time, go to the NY500. Just pop in and have a coffee and have a look at some of the cars they've got in there. They've got an ex-Damon Hill Formula 1 car. They've got an ex-Andy Reid Rapid Fit Mondeo. Anthony Reid, sorry. Super Tourer. They've got that Group B Metro 6R4 of Gary Hewitt's and a whole host of other really cool. Noel Edmonds. Do you know Noel Edmonds had a car company?
I didn't. No.
He did, apparently, and there's one in there. There's all the information on it. It's like a little three-wheeler thing. It's quite cute.
Oh, right. Well, who'd have known?
There's another rally man, wasn't he, Noel Edmonds? Well, more racing, but...
Yeah, in fact, Phil Jobson, who came past a little bit earlier, his registration number SNO was the number plate off a Noel Edmonds car.
Was it really?
Yeah, he crashed it on the tour of... one of the famous races, Avon Tour of Britain, I think it was called. Yeah, it had a huge accident. That was SNO.
There's a great little bit of knowledge just being unearthed there. I love that. Noel Edmonds' registration on the side of that car. What a car that is. James Potter, Bob Duck. There's a really nice atmosphere in this final stage of the day. The sun has helped. The sun's coming in nice and low, and it just sort of casts a really nice shadow over the cars. Perfect for the photographers with their back to that sun. JP, and the voice that you can hear is Jonathan Pullen. We've got Robert Goff here as well. Managed to basically find and coerce both of these guys to give us a bit of different insight, and we like doing that. We've had quite a few pundits on special stage this year. Most planned though, so a special thank you for doing that in such unplanned. Baz Jordan and Arwell Jenkins, there's a man who does an awful lot for our sport, and he loves his rallying. I was saying earlier to Tom Hutchings, Baz is the sort of person, I mean, he's accomplished a lot, especially in the BTRDA. He's sponsored and been somebody who's been behind a lot of series. He's sponsored a lot of young drivers. And then when you put a microphone in his face at the end of a stage, he looks at you like, why do you want to talk to me?
Yeah, that's Baz already. Yeah. But very supportive. He's helped out quite a few young competitors in his time. It's fantastic to see a businessman who loves his sport and is happy to back others. And Baz definitely fits that title. And that car is quite a famous car. It's the ex-Nick Elliott championship winning car.
Ah, is it? I didn't realise that.
On Barry's own registration plate. But yeah, some great heritage there. And I think Nick Carr's looking after that car as well. Right. Yeah.
So Nick Carr is quite a busy man these days. He was involved with the RSD 131s, of course.
He was in the early days, yeah. Had a lot of experience with the Fiats. And now doing his own stuff with the Mark IIs, yeah.
Got to say, there's a lot of excitement. Here is the... showing the style and the flamboyance that has seen him come into this penultimate round of the MRF Tyres BTRDA Rally Championship with the R2 Rally Cup lead. Robert Proudlock, Stephen Brown's only a young lad as well. He's also leading the R2 Junior Cup. Not the best supported category in the BTRDA this season, but the competition there, mark my words, has been excellent. Liam Clark, you saw him through earlier in the white Fiesta R2. I'll tell you what, that's how to do it. Doesn't matter if you get it wrong, as long as you style it out. And that's exactly what we got there. As Remy Thomason and Chris Davies, actually, they did that early in eras in stage 1 as well in Gale Rig. Tell you what, that is a really great sounding car, isn't it?
Yeah, that's Paul Thompson. It's not experienced. It's very early days for Paul, but boy, he's got competitive extremely quickly. Funny enough, we were talking about Rob Carr. He had Rob Carr's old car for a little while, yeah, the Vauxhall Engine Mark II, and now moved on to this BDA Escort, and he's really showing some times. It's
this knowledge of Mark IIs, which JP has, which is fantastic. It reminds me of talking to producer Wayne about WRC cars and Group A cars. I can talk to Wayne, he'll know who's got which car. If we see a world car, I'd be like, oh yeah, that was so-and-so's on Rally Finland in 2017. I'm like, how do you know this stuff? How can you take it in and hold it in there? I mean, I know you write this stuff down, but to keep it in your head as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's quite unusual, that car, because it was Banners. It was a Raleigh shell originally, and they now got a John Dell BDG in it. And
just showing off now, JP.
Well, I could tell you more. I bore everybody, but I'll try not to do that. But yeah, nice to see a new driver out there in the field, and competitive very early on in his career. So I'm going to be following him with interest. He's often known as Rossi, by the way. Don't know where that comes from, but he's Rossi.
Rossi, there we go. So the big news then here in the MRF Tyres BTRDA Rally Championship is that Nigel Jenkins and Kaz Jenkins have reached the end of this 13-mile monster stage through Langdale and will be winging their way back to the finish now to confirm their position as our new Fuchs Lubricants Bronze Star champions in the BTRDA. A very well-deserved title, and one which I know they will be extremely delighted to have taken here in Yorkshire, having had the disappointment of an engine rebuild, and Nigel having worked so hard to get that car back on song for this round. They've taken it in style, in the best possible way. And talking of style, Steve Bannister, a man who needs no introduction here in Yorkshire, still with that customary red stripe, and it just amazes me when I can watch in-cars of the 1981 York National Rally, and he's still here and he's still fighting in the thick of it.
Yeah, he is, and he wants to be.
How does that happen? How do some people have this kind of gene where they just never slow down?
He's just so fit. Yeah, it's just, I mean, he's in his 70s and he's a very, very fit guy. Still works very hard, loves his sport, and he's dedicated to getting good results. He works hard at it, and fair play, what a lot of experience he's gained over the years and some fantastic results. Used to fight against Robert's dad, of course, in the BTRDA Championship. He used to have some fantastic battles.
If you just tuned in, you'll have missed the nice moment where Robert told us what he got Sam Collis and Julie Collis for their wedding present. It was actually a bag of Bannister potatoes, which is a nice little nod to rally heritage and Yorkshireness. But no, it must be nice to be somebody, I don't know if he even, it probably washes off over him, but to drive through a stage like this and know that like everybody's telling stories about you and about what you've done in the sport, that's been incredible.
He's a legend, and everybody has a story about Banner, and he's still making stories now.
James Lepley in that SO Mark II has been going well. His brother George, putting years on him there. What a two-car stable that is, a Mark II and a four-wheel drive Mitsubishi Galant VR4. Jason Lepley, of course, and you know, there's a name in the sport as well. But to have two brothers out there competing in the sharp end of it must be quite a cool thing for Jason.
Oh, he must be extremely proud of them. They're both very, very capable drivers, so he must be very proud of them.
When George came out in the BTRDA in that WD-40 Evo 10 a couple of years ago, he's been out for a couple of years, but I tell you what, that was some moment there. I'm not sure who that was coming into view. It's not Jason Pritchard, is it? Michael McDade, showing us perhaps why he has a big chicane-sized Was it Harry Stubbs, wasn't it? Michael McDade and Harry Stubbs, wasn't it? Showing us why he's got such a big dent in his door there, coming into view, very crossed up. But yeah, George Lepley came out of the blocks in that WD-40 Evo 10 and was fighting for overall rally victories. And I know with you see these people that don't quite have enough backing from third parties to get them to the next step. And he's somebody that I'd love to see in a works supported car, or with a big sponsor, to get him a little bit further up the ladder.
Yeah, hard to do these days, and it's always been hard anyway. There are so few drives around, and certainly not paid drives anyway. So unless you can find the money, it's going to be very, very, very hard.
That sponsorship from WD-40 was great and really helped them at the time. There was a lot of marketing around that as well, but it is sad that we don't see more of George Lepley. It's great to have him back out. So here is the man who could today. I'm not sure how the maths will work out. We'll see where Andy Davison ends up, but there's a man you've been fighting with, former Silver Star champion Robert Goff, Boyd Kershaw, Keegan Rees alongside, the Flying Kiwi for a reason.
Yeah, we've had a bit of fun this year.
I'd say it was, for Boyd, a little bit off the pace today. Any reason for that you know of?
I don't know. He had an accident or trouble on the woodpecker, and it always takes a bit to get your momentum back to where you were.
That DNF at the last round did throw things wide open. Unfortunately for you guys, you've got another one here today, but with you both having a DNF, it brought Andy Davison closer into that fight. He was second place behind Boyd coming into this, with you and Morris just behind. Sorry to keep reminding you that, Mr. Goff. Ben Friend and Cliffy Simmons, the man who took the British Historic Rally Championship was it 2 seasons or 2 seasons ago, wasn't it? Another young talent who came through the junior ranks, and instead of jumping into a four-wheel drive car, jumped into a historic car and won the British Historic Rally Championship at the first time of asking.
Yeah. What an entertaining driver as well. He really goes for it, doesn't he? Yeah. He uses that engine. And,
nice lad as well.
Oh, fantastic lad, lovely. And some great experience next to him with Cliffy.
Do you know the story about Cliffy turning up in a suit last night to scrutineering? Was it just that he'd come from work, or?
Didn't he? I have no idea what was going on there.
There were enough selfies and photos and mic taking going on that I think there must be something else to it.
Well, I'm sure he deserves it, whatever it was.
I think he just drives it. I think he just wears that all the time, doesn't he? Yeah, he does.
Is he in that right now, in his suit?
Dress to impress, isn't it, I think?
Dress to impress.
Gentleman driver.
We better stop there, because Cliffy's not here to defend himself, is he? But there's definitely a story there that hasn't quite been a fair target. Ben Friend and Cliffy Simmons, again, going very well today. So it looks like we have sewn up our Fuchs Lubricants Bronze Star overall title, although second and third are still all to play for going into the final round of the Cambrian in a few weeks' time at the end of October in Llandudno. And there is Seb Perez, perhaps Gary McElhaney alongside, perhaps trying to make back some time, but you know what, that doesn't look like a very healthy Porsche engine under there at all, does it? There's a lot of oil smoke coming out of there. That's a case of getting through to the finish and hoping that it's not too bad at the other end, isn't it?
Yeah, he needs to nurse that to the finish, doesn't it? That sounds very sick. And I guess he's still got some road miles to do after this as well to get to the final.
Quite a few, because it's Filey, isn't it?
Yeah. So he's going to have to look after
Passage control at the Moorcock, isn't there? Just at Langdale, at Hackness.
That's right, yeah. So he's going to have to nurse that car very carefully. That did sound awful, didn't it?
Yeah, you don't often see plumes of oil smoke in the forest these days. I mean, that's another thing. Car prep. I know that's the name of a company these days, but rally car prep these days is such a high standard. You don't see the clubman cars, do you? I remember just a few years ago, there'd be the odd one that was all knocked about. We wore on scrutineering now, or wore on the service area. They're all immaculate.
Yeah, exactly. And the scrutineers sort of turn their nose up at a clubman car that's got a bit of muck inside under the bonnet, which was commonplace in the old days. So, but it's lovely to see people take such pride in the cars. I mean, Robert's car, absolutely beautiful. Yeah. These cars are lovely. It's beautiful to see.
Robert's watching, perhaps misty eye. There we go. Andy Davison with his arm out the window. I'm sure that was a thumbs up, Robert Goff.
Yeah, he had a big smile on his face, and
absolutely wasn't a thumbs up. But Tom Murphy alongside, on for a Silver Star result this year. That is for certain. Whether it will be the Silver Star result, the man in front of him a few cars on the road, that Flying Kiwi of Boyd Kershaw and Keegan Rees, will be the one now to decide that. I think mathematically you will still be in it. I got a message earlier saying you probably are, depending on what happens to those two.
Well, they know more than me, but I don't know. We'll have to have a look at when we get home, and but I'd probably do the Cambrian anyway and see what happens and get some more practice for the RAC, because that's getting closer and closer and closer. So that's what everyone's focusing on now, I think.
In an RAC year, you get to this point of the year, and every historic rally driver that's doing the RAC will talk about that and nothing else, regardless of what other championships they might have on their plate and on their mind. And Robert Goff is doing just that, and I'm delighted to say we are part of an extended media package this year on the RAC, and there'll be a combination of stage and stage end and live and recorded highlight packages right the way through the rally. And I'm also delighted that I won't be in my garage having to hot-foot it back. That's the joys of working in football, not being able to get the time off and having to do it from my garage. I used to record bits during the day ready. Wayne would have things ready. We'd get the link all set up, and I'd dive back from work, and my missus would have the food ready for me to gobble down before we did the live bits, and then there'd be a beer waiting for me. Actually, do you know what? I'm saying it. I'm selling it to myself. I'll leave you to do the RAC, Wayne, and I'll do it in my garage again. Get a cold beer at the end of each live stage.
You'd be able to wear a suit.
Yeah. I did the
at the stage finish.
Yeah. I did the William Woolard suit and the live coverage. As we went on, I got more and more eccentric throughout the 5 days, and to the point where in the last one we had the Top Gear Rally Report music. We had the backdrop, of course, which is still up in my garage, and then I've got all the times written on just as they were as they came through, with Ryan, of course, as the winner of that year, and I was there in my William Woolard suit by the end of the week. Extremely eccentric. I had my normal trousers on though, because the camera didn't go below the waist. No.
Well, why wear trousers? Well, there's no need, was there?
I was wearing trousers, JP. I did a podcast with Mark Blundell and Guy Smith during lockdown, and Mark Blundell got up from behind the desk while we were on this podcast and we were filming it as well, and he just had his boxer shorts on with this smart shirt and tie, and then his British touring car team colours. Gareth James. Daniel Petrie, another name that I got wrong and was reminded at the BTR. There was a BTRDA Awards when everybody who I'd got their name wrong for the last 10 years decided to gang up on me. And Michelle Petrie was right. So I've been calling him Petrie for the last 10 years, and it was even worse that Mark Twynham, as I said before, had been I saw him all the time and at every awards do, and he never mentioned it once. I handed awards out to him having announced his name just before. If someone had called me Woodford or something, and I'd say it's Woodford actually for future reference. Yeah. I wouldn't wait 12 years. No. Well, at least he told you eventually, Paul. That was something. I suppose so. They maybe just enjoyed it while it lasted. Whoa, look at that. That is a sight, isn't it? I love the fact that even Nick Elliott's name on the typeface on the side of that car is Water Rule style, and what looks like the original typeface. I had a poster on my wall as a kid on the Acropolis with Water Rule fully broadside, just like Nick Elliott was, just there. And it said, winning laurels but never resting on them. Oh, wonderful. Iconic. Michelle Petrie, we love you really. My dad, Dave Woodford, is tuned in. Good to have you along, Dad. Need to get that Lambretta of yours finished in the garage. Need some two-stroke smells in our lives. I'm in a neck of the woods where I used to come with my dad and watch rallying. That's what got me into all of this, and then persuaded him to build a Mark II Cortina while I was at school, and we did a little bit there in the HCRC. And these days he's granddad, and it gets quite busy, doesn't it, that? Yeah, it does. He's got a bit of pressure on, hasn't he? Yeah. Another fast driver, Roger Chilman, who never fails to do the business in the British Historic Rally Championship. And Martin Ruddle, those spectators could do some weeding while they're waiting. Well, they could, but you can ask them, I'm not. The spectators you're talking about at the opposite side of the road, actually, are the cast of the Bangers and Cash programme. The Matthewsons have joined us here in the Langdale stage, which is funny, actually, because their Moorcock pub that is owned by the Matthewsons, aka Bangers and Cash, is one of the passage controls. We passed it on the way in. RC side, great coverage. Chaz Gisby. I'll probably get that wrong as well. Probably Gisby rather than Gisby, would you say? Thanks for the coverage. Enjoying himself watching. Wow, look at that. There was some sight. Looking at the photos of Jason Pritchard and Phil Clark with those spot lamps bolted on the front of that Escort last night. Former British Historic Rally champion you know, multiple asphalt, 3-time asphalt rally champion. It doesn't matter what you put him in, what surface you put him in, World Rally Car, historic. It just is such a fast driver. And actually, he had a bit of an uncharacteristically, not slow, but for him, slow on pace on the Ceredigion. He bogged down in a couple of places. I mean, that's as much as I'm going to get from Jason Pritchard to say something about us. But the only story I could come up with, mentioned it to him, he was wounded, mortally wounded that I mentioned that. He was like, I didn't have any moments at all. I said, you bogged down, that's for you. And he's like, oh, yeah, I did.
And that's all you can find.
And again, another driver with a very capable father. Oh, look at Robert here having a go.
Talking of bogging down. There we go. Matthew Robinson, Sam Collis, who we heard from Robert Goff earlier, isn't feeling the best this weekend. Actually, what was nice was, I know there's time yet because they've only just got married, but Julie posted on Facebook to say how excited she was about this weekend. Give it 10 years and it'll be no more rallying.
She's obviously a stalwart there because he must be a handful, mustn't he?
He is a handful. Even when I can give him back, he's a handful. But she's been a massive supporter from the start. I mentioned the Beaver. I was at one of the starts on the Beaver when those two had only just got together. And he introduced me to Julie. And even then, she was out in the middle of the night, really supportive. And that's really important. I've got a very supportive wife at home. It won't surprise you to know. And I know you have as well.
Yeah, I have too. You're absolutely right. It's imperative.
Robert Goff is heading off. Thank you so much for joining us. You're a gentleman, and we do hope that you're back in the fight at the Cambrian, and you've just confirmed you're going to be there either way, which is great news.
Fingers crossed, hopefully, yeah. And hopefully